Welcome, my friends, and this is Swimbait TV, and I'm your host, Francesco Di Giovanni. Today, we're going to talk about the setups that I like to use when I go out striped bass fishing, specifically for big stripers, big river, lake stripers. When I talk about big, I'm talking about, 15 pounds and up, all the way up to 40, 50, you know, whatever the case is. But specifically, we're talking about, realistically speaking, we're talking about the 15 to 35, 40 pound range stripers. So when I go out fishing for stripers, I like to take dedicated setups to go out there and hunt them. So let's start off with the first setup I like to always have on the boat, which is a topwater setup. And what I mean by topwater setup is a rod reel combination that we use to throw just big topwater baits, like big wooden spooks, resin spooks, such as 8-inch punker, 10-inch punker, the Fin Bait Customs, and such. So the first rod we have here in the lineup is an Omega swim bait rod by Leviathan. So this is the Omega extra heavy. It's rated extra heavy. Is a 2 to 8 ounce rating. It is, of course, built on the NFC blanks, which are some of the best blanks out there for swim baits. They're all double foot guides from butt to tip. Nice long handle to help launch the baits. I also like to change the butt on these, and I like to upgrade to like a something like hard plastic or metal, just for durability. My reel of choice on this rod, a Shimano Conquest 400. It is tuned with high-speed bearings. I changed the handle to just a Gomexis handle. And for my top water baits, I like to run 80-pound braid all the way. No leader, no need for it. Never had a need for it. And tied direct to a snap with a San Diego gem knot. So that's what we like to do here. San Diego gem knot tied directly to the snap. We got the rod. Double foot guides all the way. This is what I like to use for topwater. My other setup I can't go without when I go big striper fishing is a dedicated setup for soft swim baits. And for this, I like to use the F5 Custom. This is also double foot guides, butt to tip. I do not like to use single footed guides on my rods, just for durability. I know they're lighter, I know they have their advantages. It's just what I like to use and what I used for years, and that's what I like to stick with. Again, the real choice on this setup is the Conquest 400 by Shimano again, and this one we're running 30-pound cold poly. Handle switch on this, again, Gomexis. We went up to a 110 millimeter. Just the longer the handle, in my opinion, the longer the handle on the higher speed reels, and the better control you have on the speed of your retrieve. I like to crawl my soft baits right to the bottom. So therefore, I like a very steady and slow retrieve when I'm bringing these baits back. So, so this is a 6.3, I always look at inches per turn. That's what counts. So this is about 33 inches per turn. So a nice steady retrieve on a 10-inch Huddleston, an 8-inch Huddleston, a big Savage Gear 12-inch rubber bait, nice and slow, you know what I mean? But then if you want to speed it up, you can always speed it up, depending on the situation. But this is what I like for my soft baits. Again, it's a nice little setup. You don't have to start with something like this. This is pretty high end. Next, we're going to talk about, alright, so these first two setups, I do not leave the house. Like if I'm going fishing and I don't really want to get into it today, but I just want to be out there and capitalize on the opportunities that I see I will always have the top water rod with me, and that should always be ready with a top water bait tied on and ready for action, because you'll never know as you're fishing throughout the day when you're going to encounter feeding stripers, and that's a target of opportunity. That's how you can get into some really big fish while they're feeding. Always have a top water rod ready for it. Next time, I have a dedicated depths 250 rod setup, or for baits similar. What we're talking similar, we're talking about 3.5 ounce range to 6 ounce range glide baits or jointed swimmers. Again, this is a F5 custom, double foot guides, butt to tip, because that's how I roll. And on this one, we have a particularly fast reel. We have a Shimano Scorpion 300 MD XG, which is, they only make 1 gear ratio on this specific model. It's a 2021 with a running 20-pound co-poly on this, which is sufficient enough if you play the fish right. You could bump it up to 25 if you like, but glides specifically might tend to swim a little bit different as you go higher in line rating. So I think that 20 co-poly specific brands is good enough to toss the 5 ounce bait. I never break on the cast, never cast anything off with the lines I use. And we'll get into lines of choice in another episode of Swimbait TV. But for now, let's stick with the setup so we're talking here. Scorpion 300, we changed the handle on this. So on this one right here, we got a 110 millimeter handle, which is, just nice to give it that, snap action you want to give your 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So this is my medium to medium large glide bait setup for stripers specifically. Now, for my bigger baits, and I'm talking 10 inches and up, 11 inch, 12 inch, 13 inches, 14 inches, all the way up to 15 inches. This is the setup I use. This is a custom nameless rod, swimbait rod, nameless customs. The blank is a Striker 7.9. It's rated 2 to 10, and this baby will throw the entire range, 2 to 10 ounces. And I pair this with a Conquest 300 XG, which is the newest in the lineup from Shimano. It's got the faster gearing on it and the monster drive. 25-pound co-poly. I am throwing the biggest of baits. Again, double foot guides, butt to tip, and Conquest 300, high speed gear ratio, because that's perfect to control these larger glides. When I'm talking larger glides, I'll show you exactly to give you an idea what I'm talking about here. And yes, we also did change the handle on the reel here. This is a high speed reel, so the 120 millimeter on this one gives you perfect leverage on the big glides, for me anyways. On that rod, we're throwing things like these. I mean, just big protein packed meals, okay? This is a big bait. We're talking 9 ounces here. The Hero, big giant glide, 11 inches, but you have complete control with a setup like that. I like the shorter length of the rod because it gives me complete control on a lob cast. Being that I'm only 5'9", a 7'9", I can load the rod in its entirety and launch a 9 ounce, 10 ounce bait, no problems. So that's why I like that particular setup, which took me a while to put together. After a lot of trial and errors with several different brands, blanks, that's my go-to, the 710, 7.9 EX, built by Nameless Customs for the big baits. And then is also a smaller soft bait rod when I'm really going at it. So I'll take this one for tighter spaces and like, you know, treble hook soft baits like the mag draft, you know, or big weedless baits like the 9-inch Citizen, 7-inch Citizen, the Battle Shad, and this is perfect to get into tight spots. It's the 711 Leviathan Alpha Soft Swim. It's a solid rod. It's rated 1.5 ounces to 8 ounces, and again, this is a rod that will throw the entire range of the blank. It is very fast, extra fast tip, so it's really made to drive those weedless hooks into the jaw of the fish. That's it, enough said on that. And I pair this, as of right now, there's a Tatula 300 on it, which is a great budget reel and a workhorse. But usually what I'm running on this is a Conquest 300, the 2018 version, which is 6.3 gear ratio. And it's complements it perfectly. You could even go down a size to a 200. But I have the 300 here because I can handle both the stripers and the largemouth bass fishing on it. I cross-utilize a lot of my setups. All these setups that you see here that I showed you today are the same setups that I use for bass fishing. Okay, I cross-utilize. So my big bait setup that I showed you, that's what I use for big baits in my freshwater swim bait game as well. The Depth 250 rod, well, I use that same setup with the same line for the bass, so on and so forth. So this is the rods that I like to use, and we eventually are going to go into a more in-depth conversation about each and individual setup and the situations and the times that I like to use them, some of the baits that I like to go with it, the line choice, and why I use specific actions and specific rod reel combinations and everything. We'll go into an in-depth conversation. We're going to break this down into episodes. So please subscribe and follow me onto my channel, Swimbait TV, as Solo Swimbaiter. Please like, subscribe, leave comments. Understand that everything you've seen or heard are just my personal opinion and what I like to do specifically. It's not a, I am not endorsed by any of these companies that I just mentioned, the reel makers or the rod builders. These are just my personal preferences. There's no endorsement involved here. I'm not a sponsored fisherman. Just myself and my personal experiences. I also want to talk to you about some budget setups that you can use to, you know, when you're first getting into it. These are pretty high-end setups. I mean, you know, reels are over $200-300. Some of them are $500, and so are the rods. So not really for the beginner. For the beginner, there is two rods I recommend, and that's the Dobyns 867 and the Dobyns 908, because you can cover most of all the fishing that I described here with those two rods. They're fairly inexpensive in the spectrum of swim bait rods, and they come with all, you know, good materials, you know, good guides, you know, all double-footed, butt to tip, good durability, good warranty. For reel choice, if you want to stay in budget, I would recommend like a Daiwa Lexa 300. You know, I've caught fish up over 30 pounds with that reel, no problem. I would recommend a Shimano Tranx 300 or a 400, which you can get in the used market for relatively cheap. They're workhorses. Change the bearings on them, you really got yourself a very good reel. This is one of my oldest Tranx that I just got back from, you know, getting tuned with bearings. I mean, it's a workhorse. The handle is off as of right now. Caught hundreds and hundreds of fish on this reel, and it's never let me down. You know, another good budget reel is the Tatula 300 and the Tatula 400, which is just a smidge bigger than the 300, so it makes it a good trophy big striper reel, Tatula 400. The Lexa 400 is significantly bigger than its younger sister, the Lexa 300, so be aware of that. But anyhow, I recommend all of these products I just mentioned for the beginner and for the more advanced. Stay tuned for individual episodes coming up on each individual specific setup and when I like to use them. Thank you.